Welcome to Sky Women. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Moyers, a wife, mom, and board-certified OB-GYN. This is a place to educate, empower, and inspire. Join us each week as we share the power of women's stories. Real women, real stories, real inspiration. Put on your stretchy pants. Let's get going. Welcome, Sky community. Welcome back to another episode of Sky Women. Today, I have with me my friend and colleague, Dr. Dana Gibbs. Dr. Gibbs is an ENT allergy doctor with a special interest in hormone and thyroid balancing, focusing in this moment on hormonal effect of chronic stress. And what woman is not chronically stressed, right? Because you landed in my office telling me, I just don't feel at home in my body anymore. A lot of it can be hormonal changes, but sometimes it is that it's the stress level we have and the elevated cortisol. And so Dr. Gibbs is here today to share with us and help us to kind of unpack this and know what we can do. Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Moyers. It's so great to be here and see you. So I have basically retired from my ENT practice and have now a hormone and thyroid balancing practice in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Amazing. And I love your story. That's just a backstory for our listeners is that you came into this because of your own experience. And you were telling me that in your medical training, you had a hard time getting things done and following through because you were so extremely exhausted and things were misdiagnosed for a long time for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I did not get diagnosed with a thyroid imbalance until I had been out of training for several years. And, I heard somebody say at a conference, you don't have to have abnormal TSH to have benefit from taking thyroid medicine. And I started, and it was like this crazy miracle. It's like, who is this person? What have you done with who I used to be? And it was like, all of a sudden I feel like what I'm supposed to feel like, and that was great for a while, but I was so curious about this, what's going on. And so I looked for more information about it and finally came up with a mentor who explained to me a great way to systematize it and apply it in a scientific way where it's reproducible, which is great. The next part of my story is also my personal story because as things happen, I eventually started down the road into perimenopause and menopause, and my thyroid got messed up again because that's what happens. Yeah. And so I went looking for answers again, and I found a new mentor who was even smarter, and he has taught me so many things about the interrelations of stress hormones and thyroid and the sex steroid hormones, and how when things got out of balance, there are actually things that you can do to, one, prevent that, and then two, fix it once it has happened. So,
yeah, I think that's a fair point that going through the different changes, especially the hormonal changes that we go through as a woman in the lifespan of a woman, it can just lead to a lot of frustration, a lot of unknowing, and patients feel dismissed in the healthcare system. There's often not clear answers. And we are not taught the prevention, right? Majority of the time in medical school, we're taught treating illness. And so I love that you're taking this more integrative approach. So let's talk about like the typical patient who finds you. You were telling me some of your success stories with patients. Tell me who the typical patient is who finds you. And then let's talk about what stress does to our bodies.
Okay. So the typical patient in the past who used to find me was somebody who had developed nodules in their thyroid, and they would come to me as a surgeon thinking that they needed to have it out. And my goal as a surgeon was not just to do surgery, it was to prevent unnecessary surgery. And so I would start in with, well, let's make sure it's not cancer first, obviously. And then let's see if we can stop it from growing. And by the way, I've got this symptom questionnaire, and it says here that you're tired and sleepy all the time, that your skin is dry, your hair is falling out, and that you feel terrible all the time. Let's see if we can't do something about that. And so have a system, and it's fairly scientific and not really easily described just on a podcast, but I don't just check the TSH level and go, oh, you're good. There's a lot more to it than that. But what
you're looking at the full thyroid panel, right?
Yeah. And not just what most doctors think of as the full thyroid panel. I'm testing 5 to 8 different tests, looking at what's going on underneath the surface.
Sure.
But the other thing that I noticed with a lot of these folks is that they also have their sex steroid hormones, their female hormones, estrogen, progesterone, are also not optimal. And sometimes getting the thyroid straightened out just snaps everything back into place and it's all good, but sometimes it doesn't. And so you start looking at lifestyle, and there's really 5 pillars of things that really mess things up. And one of them is not sleeping well enough or enough. Then the second one is nutrition. I mean, I'm really happy that the world has now turned away from this low fat, everything is good, because what happens when you eat low fat is that you end up with high sugar. And sugar is really, the more I read about it, the more I understand about it. It's like refined sugar and sweets are just terrible. And even artificial sweeteners, just terrible. It drives your insulin levels up, and high insulin just ruins your body. I mean, it's directly related to longevity. They've really proven that now. And so
that's something that I really focus on too in my practice, is educating patients that we need to eat full fat, high nutrient food.
Yes. And no sweets. Yeah. And no sweets. But anyway, so then the third thing, so we've got sleep, we've got nutrition, and then we've got stress. And it's humans are the only species that drives our bodies to just utter exhaustion. And this is in the absence of war, famine,
right? We're not being
a
threatened.
refugee.
We create the threats.
No, we're not being threatened, but we create threats. And what they have proven now, which is mind-blowing to me, is that worrying about things happening, not turning out well, is just as stressful to your body as the actual bad thing happening. I mean, worrying about getting cancer is just as bad for your body as actually having and being treated for cancer. It's like, whoa, that's profound to me.
Yeah.
And so I really have started looking at mindfulness, meditation, and coaching and mindset, and this concept that just because a thought blows through your mind doesn't mean you have to believe it and act on it. I mean, that's been huge in my life.
Yeah.
But so those 3 things, so mindset or prayer or meditation, nutrition, and exercise. I'm sorry, I forgot. How could I forget exercise?
Sure.
All those are things that help lower your stress levels. And why that's important is because there's this hormone called cortisol, and a lot of people are not even aware that this is a thing. But everything that you do that stresses your body, and I'm not just talking about stresses your brain, I'm talking about the high sugar foods, the lack of exercise, the lack of sleep, all of these things raise your cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And the stress hormone, when it's chronically high, a couple of things happen. One is that you become insulin resistant if you weren't already. And insulin resistance is a horrible problem already, because I've heard 30 to 40% of people are already genetically insulin resistant. And insulin resistance then makes, even before you have diabetes, it makes your insulin levels go up. And then if your nutrition is not great, they go up even more. And if your cortisol goes up, then your insulin goes up even more. And it does a lot of bad things to your body because it downregulates your sex steroid hormones. It downregulates your thyroid. It can cause depression. It can cause increased pain sensitivity. It can cause anxiety. I mean, people think, oh, well, I'm anxious because of XYZ. Well, no, you might be anxious because your insulin levels are high, even though they've told you you don't have diabetes. So there's just so much there. And it's a very complicated balance. And when things get out of balance, everything goes down.
100%. I mean, this is the typical patient who comes into my office and she's like, I just don't feel at home in my body anymore. You know, this whole list of symptoms. And my big thing is like, consider that, yes, it could be thyroid disorder. Yes, it could be, you know, a new onset of migraines or whatever, but it also could be perimenopause and menopause that we're not addressing. And, you know, majority of patients who go seeking treatment for perimenopause and menopause don't get treatment because physicians aren't well trained. So it's really important that we have physicians who are taking in a good approach and really paying attention to these symptoms. So speaking from someone who lives with chronic stress and probably creates more stress than is needed in my life, tell us, how can we reduce our cortisol level? Yes, we know we need to move our body. We need to get good sleep. We need to eat good food. We need to limit our processed sugars and processed foods. What else?
Boy, I really have loved meditation. I really started loving meditation. You
meditation is a practice too, isn't it? It's a practice.
It's a practice. Okay, some people
because it's hard.
People, and they have a practice where they pray every day and they visualize good things flowing to them and all that stuff. And that's basically to your brain, to your cortisol levels. That's the same as meditation. That's what meditation does as well. Meditation helps you sleep sounder at night. And so it's a downward spiral in everything. So that's one thing. But there are also some issues where if you are chronically stressed and your adrenal glands, that's the gland that makes cortisol. If your adrenal glands have been pumping out so much cortisol for so long, it can actually become depleted of the nutrients that it needs to make that cortisol, which you need, your body needs. It's essential for life. I mean, we're talking about cortisol like it's some horrible thing, but if you don't have cortisol, you die. I mean, that's what happens. But it's like the car factories running out of chips. They can't make the cars anymore if you don't have the nutrition. And here's the thing. Our grandparents used to eat all the parts of an animal. They would eat the internal organs. They would eat the adrenal glands of a cow. And we don't even eat sausage anymore. They've told us how bad it is for us. So people who are trying to be healthy, we don't eat sausage anymore. We don't eat salt anymore. So guess what? You don't have iodine. You can't make thyroid hormone. So there are a couple of really specific nutrients that I recommend in a very specific sequence to almost every one of my stressed out patients that comes in. And I'm happy to share that with your audience if you're interested in it, because it's, like I said, it's very, very specific. Okay. So the first one is bovine neonatal adrenal cortex. And that sounds really gross, but that's what it is. There's no vegetarian way to get this particular set of cofactors, which are like the tools that the factory workers need to put the cars together. And you take it in a very specific sequence because cortisol is something that your body makes a lot of towards the end of the night while you're sleeping. And it goes really, really high. And it's probably at its highest, maybe by 8 or 9 in the morning. And then it tapers off through the day. And at, 7 p.m. or just after dinner, maybe coming on 9 o'clock, it's getting to where its very lowest time is. And so you can't take this nutrient at bedtime. This is absolutely, I'm sorry, you can take it at bedtime. You can't take it at dinner time. You don't want to bump it up right before bedtime. So you want to take it in the morning when you first get up, and you want to take it right as you're getting into bed to go to sleep, because your body needs those tools to work through the night to make the cortisol that you need for the next day. So I start people small. If they're super stressed out, I'll start them very, very small. Start them with a half of one of those just in the morning. And then once you're up to, okay, I'm doing better. Now I can tolerate one of those. Now I can tolerate two of those in the morning. Then you add the bedtime dose, one, and maybe you can go up to two at bedtime, and then maybe one at lunch. But you don't want to go more than 5, and you never want to take them around dinner time. So that's thing number one. The second thing is that another thing that we're doing, because everybody's told us it's healthy, is we're lowering our cholesterol. We're lowering our cholesterol with medication. We're lowering it with our diet. Well, guess what your hormones are made out of? They're made out of cholesterol. If you don't have enough of it, what's going to happen? Then you run out of raw materials. And the first hormone that gets stolen from is estrogen. Guess what you need a lot of if you're going into perimenopause? That's what's running out. So you can see if somebody's really stressed out. So say you've got an Olympic runner. You hear this all the time. Oh, I don't have periods anymore. Well, why don't they? Because they're so busy pumping out cortisol that their body doesn't have any reserve to make estrogen anymore. When things get really bad, then you can run out of something called aldosterone. And aldosterone is the hormone that helps you retain the water and salt that you eat. And so if you don't have enough aldosterone, you will start getting lightheaded and dizzy and passing out. And this is what was happening to me during residency. And I had no idea what was going on. I just knew I couldn't stand up anymore. I had to sit down or I was going to fall down. And I had no idea. And nobody ever told me until I met this mentor. And he said, this is what's happening. I'm like, dude, that's crazy stuff. So the answer is not to take cholesterol, not to eat more cholesterol, although you could do that, I guess, but to take a supplement called pregnenolone. And pregnenolone is the precursor to all the hormones, not just the sex hormones. It's the precursor to cortisol. It's the precursor to aldosterone. It's the precursor to sex steroids. And if you start with a small dose of that, and I'm thinking 10 milligrams twice a day is a really good place to start, that a lot of this imbalance and this fatigue and this garbage will go away. Now, that doesn't mean you can ignore your nutrition or your exercise or your mindfulness or your sleep. You absolutely can't. Yeah. But those two supplements, for some of my patients, that's all they have to do. And things come back to normal. One other thing that I do recommend, and I touched on this briefly earlier, is that there are minerals that your thyroid needs in order to function right. And I have heard of, and I have seen people who have taken extremely high doses of iodine, and it is dangerous and it is not a good thing. And you'll cause yourself to get a goiter if you do that. But you can go and you can buy a supplement called a trace mineral supplement, which has, if you take 1 or 2 of those a day, just about the right amount of iodine for somebody to be having a healthy thyroid function. The other thing is it supplies selenium, it supplies zinc, and some other more minor minerals that your body really needs to function well. And many of us are not getting those anymore just because we don't eat salt anymore. It's like, what the heck? We thought it was good for us not to eat salt. So those 3 things are really one of the, other than the analysis of the thyroid and the analysis of the hormones with labs, which, I don't know that, if you try some of this stuff for months or 2 and you're like, well, I'm not noticing any difference at all, that, you need to see a physician. And this is something that can potentially be quite serious and needs to be taken care of by a knowledgeable physician. And so I strongly encourage people, if you've got any concern for any medical condition, that you consult your doctor and find out what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important point. This is medical education, not medical advice, direct medical
Not medical
advice.
advice.
So make sure that you review your history and physical, your medications that you're taking with your physician. But this is helpful information. I mean, just the simple lifestyle pillars, the simple supplements that one could take, and the mindfulness and meditation. This is something that I have implemented in my life, and it definitely is a practice because I could not sit still. I could not sit still and meditate.
Yes.
And so I would do a walking meditation. And now I'm to the point where I can sit still in my closet in the morning in quiet time and envision. What I do is envision the best version of myself. How do I want to show up today? Right? Do I know her? Do I see her? Do I believe in her? Right. And I always think there's this holy writing that says, find me within you, strong, steadfast. Can't remember what the other one is right now. Strong, steadfast, mighty, strong, and steadfast.
Okay.
And so that's what I do.
Well, and that's an incremental process. Because if you sit down one day and you go, I can't visualize that. Well, you're not a failure because you're a success because you tried. Get up and try again tomorrow.
100%. Yeah. Like I always tell my kids, you have to be willing to suck at something long enough to be good at it.
Oh, don't I know it? Anything worth doing is worth sucking at for a while to get it right.
Yeah. You got to live through the suck. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, this is very helpful information. If our listeners want to find you, how would they find you?
Sure. So my website, which is brand new, is consultantsinmetabolism.com, or you can find me on the socials at Dana Gibbs, MD. And I am in the North Texas area with a brand new hormone and thyroid balancing medical practice. So
fantastic.
I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm wishing you well, cheering you on.
Thank you so much.
Until next week.
Enjoyed being here. Yeah.
Yeah. Until next week, be well.
All right, Sky community, thank you for listening to another episode. This episode was sponsored by Sky Women's Health. As a reminder, we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we help relieve back pain and pelvic pain in pregnancy and beyond. If you are pregnant and having pain and you feel like you have no reliable way to relieve it, look us up at skywomenshealth.com, request an appointment, and we'll call to get you scheduled. As a board-certified OBGYN with a Neuromusculoskeletal Medicine Fellowship, I help you realign with hands-on drug-free treatment and relieve pain on the spot without medication. We'll help you maintain these results through your pregnancy and postpartum period. Every pregnant person deserves this, and we are so excited to serve you. You can find us on our website, as mentioned, or on social at Sky Women's Health, or you can call the office at 817-915-9803. That's it for today. Until next week, be well.